나무 소재로 되어 있어서 너무 약간 따뜻한 편안한 이 느낌이 나네요. 너무 좋다. 오, 이거 위로 보세요. 짜잔. 오, 이게 경복궁에서 많이 봤던 것 같은데요. 약간 그 한옥 이잖아요 여기. 그리고 이제 바로 옆에 여러 가지 책이 있는데 하나씩 노트가 붙어 있네요. 오, 뭘까요? 한번 내가 아는 책이 있는지 없는지 한번 보고 거기도 노트가 붙어 있으면 한번 읽어볼게요. 여기 하나 있다. 딸에 대하여. 짜잔. 되게 어떤 내용이냐면 인간관계란 아무리 연습해도 지금 정말 쉽지 않은 일입니다. 그건 맞는 말이구나. 약간 줄거리보다는 이 되게 배경이나 그런 거에 이제 위주로 다는 노트 코멘트인 것 같아요. 우리는 원래 뭐 책 살 때 먼저 눈에 들어온 거는 이렇게 책 표지잖아요. 아니면 뭐 제목도 그렇고. 근데 오히려 이런 노트 코멘트를 보고 결정하는 것도 나쁘지 않을 것 같아요. 너무 좋아요. 여기 노트 하나가 있는데 추천 플러스 토론 선정 총 3번의 과정을 거친 분야별 좋은 책들. 나 이거 옛날에 한번 읽었던 것 같은데 단순한 진심. 이것도 독서 모임에서 한 4번째 정독 자세히 읽었다는 뜻인 거죠. 와, 근데 여기도 하나하나 지금 메모가 붙어 있는데 좀 궁금한데 이게 진짜 누가 썼을까요? 선생님 한번 일로 오세요. 이거 반갑습니다.
찾아주셔서 감사합니다.
예. 우선은 사실 여기 메모들은 다 손글씨로 쓰셨잖아요.
직접 썼습니다.
다 읽었고?
요 안에 있는 책은 제가 다 읽었고요.
이야기 좀더 많이 듣고 싶은데 앉아서 한번 이어서 얘기해 볼까요?
그럴까요?
이 책방 언제부터 운영하셨어요?
시작한 지는 6년 됐습니다.
6년이 됐어요? 저랑 동갑이네요. 저는 한국 생활 6년 차입니다.
그래요?
이 서점만의 특징이 따로 있어요, 혹시?
첫 번째는 재미있는 책을 고르는 거, 두 번째는 그 재미있는 책을 가지고 사람들을 모아서 재미있는 이야기를 하게 하는 거. 그게 독서 모임이에요.
그러면 언제부터?
독서 모임을 한 것은 한참 전에 이 책방을 열기 전부터 제가 독서 모임 강사였는데요. 근데 어느 날 내가 맨날 이렇게 돌아다닐 게 아니라 사람들을 불러야 되겠구나. 그래서 책방을 차려야 되겠다 생각을 했고 여기저기 돌아다니다가 서촌에 요 작은 공간을 딱 발견을 했어요. 그래서 여기다. 책방을 차렸습니다. 근데 사실 저희 책방의 또 하나의 특징이 뭐냐 하면 연령이 굉장히 다양해요. 가장 어린 사람이 사실 중학교 3학년도 있었어요. 거기서부터 뭐 대학생, 대학원생, 뭐 주부 해서 60대까지 있어요.
이 영상 보고 계시는 분들은 다 해외 독자분들인데 그분들한테 이 서촌구 책방 한번 소개해 주세요.
그래서 저희 책방은 한옥으로 되어 있고요. 저희는 또 책을 표지를 다 보여줘요. 제목과 표지를 보면서 정말 좋은 책을 가져가실 수 있을 겁니다.
그렇죠. 네, 여러분 잘 들으셨죠? 여러분도 많이 놀러와 주세요. 나중에 여자친구랑 같이 이렇게 와서 돌려보고 데이트하러 가야겠네.
꼭 놀러 오세요.
네, 가보겠습니다.
즐거운 시간이었습니다.
Thank you.
바이바이.
all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The death toll from the apartment complex fire in Hong Kong continues to rise as rescue and recovery efforts continue following Hong Kong's worst fire in 77 years. The search is continuing for hundreds of residents that are still unaccounted for. Here in South Korea, lawmakers have voted to pass an arrest motion for the People Power Party's former floor leader, Chu Kyung-woo, who's accused of interfering with the National Assembly's vote to lift the martial law declaration last year. U.S. President Donald Trump called for a full review of Afghan immigrants who entered the country during the Biden administration. His remarks come after the suspect in the shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers near the White House was identified as an Afghan national who arrived in the U.S. in 2021. We begin this morning in Hong Kong, where the fire at an apartment complex has now largely been extinguished. At least 94 people died in the blaze, and hundreds are still missing. Authorities are now moving to find the cause of the fire as well as who is responsible. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
Charred towers and blackened empty window frames are all that remain of Hong Kong's Wang Fuk Court housing complex. These scars are the result of a 24-hour battle against flames that consumed the residential high-rises. As of early Friday morning, 94 people are confirmed dead, including a rescue team member, and more than 70 are injured after Hong Kong's deadliest fire in nearly 80 years. Hundreds of people are also still unaccounted for.
And for the firefighting operation, we encounter particular difficulties in several areas. Like the fire was spreading exceptionally fast, exceptionally rapid. So as you can see, the fire spread quickly to all the 7 blocks of the estate.
As recovery efforts continue, the investigation has turned to accountability. Police have arrested 3 executives from Prestige Construction, the firm contracted to work on renovations at the complex.
Police arrested 3 men around their 50s at midnight. Who are the company executives in charge of the renovation at Wang Fuk Court? They are being detained at the moment.
They are being held on suspicion of manslaughter. Authorities seized documents and digital records during a raid on the company's offices, investigating allegations that grossly negligent practices and unsafe materials were used. Investigators are specifically examining the bamboo scaffolding and green mesh that encased the building, which may have accelerated the fire's spread. Survivors, many of whom are elderly, have been displaced to makeshift shelters in nearby shopping malls. While community donation drives are providing immediate necessities, the long-term housing prospects for these residents remain uncertain.
I feel very touched by these things. I can wear this later. These will be useful for me tonight. I will stay at my friend's house temporarily.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered an all-out effort to manage the aftermath of the fire, underscoring the political sensitivity of the disaster. With the cost of housing a long-standing source of public discontent, authorities are moving rapidly to contain the fallout, viewing the tragedy as a critical test of governance for the region. 김도현, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, President Lee has stressed the importance of Korea's defense industry on the global stage as he returned home from a long overseas trip. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
President Lee Jae-myung opened the weekly meeting with his senior aides on Thursday by noting global interest in South Korea's defense industry the day after returning home from his 10-day-long trip to the Middle East and Africa that also took him to the G20 summit in South Africa.
국제 질서가 점점 불안정해지고 또 자국 이기주의가 심해지다 보니까 국가 간 대결 양상도 점차 심각해져 갑니다. 그래서 그런지 이 방위산업과 무기 체계에 대한 관심들이 매우 높다고 판단이 되었습니다.
He added that he felt the horrors of the war-torn Gaza Strip during his trip to the MENA region. Given such a situation, it was no coincidence that the arms industry and weapons topped the agenda as the South Korean leader met his foreign counterparts during the trip. President Lee called for unity by the people to raise the nation's economic, defense, and diplomatic capabilities, apparently mindful of division and conflict at home.
지금 있는 역량을 최대한 모아서 국제사회 질서 속에서 경쟁을 하더라도 매우 부족한데 불필요하게 우리 자신의 역량을 낭비하는 일이 최소화되면 좋겠다는 생각이.
The South Korean president, who's just 6 months into his presidency, has had a busy diplomatic schedule throughout the year as he either attended or hosted major multilateral dialogue, engaging with the G7, UN, ASEAN, APEC, and G20 members at a time of deepening global uncertainties.
이 과정에서 정부는 대한민국의 글로벌 외교를 복원시키기 위해서 모든 노력과 역량을 투입했습니다. 그 결과 우리 외교의 위상이 한층 높아지고 외교 지평도 크게 넓어졌다는 게 체감되었습니다.
He instructed his aides to work together with relevant ministries to materialize deliverables that were yielded through his summit diplomacy during the past half year. Lee has been stressing pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interests since taking office, with a focus on bolstering cooperation with the global community on AI, cutting-edge technologies, defense industry, and K-culture. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now turning to the National Assembly, a plenary session kicked off on Thursday to address a number of bills, including a high-profile motion to arrest the former floor leader of the main opposition party. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The National Assembly held a vote on a motion to arrest Chu Kyung-ho, the former floor leader of the People Power Party. The session began at 2 p.m. on Thursday, and the vote on the motion, conducted by anonymous secret ballot, passed with 172 votes in favor, 4 against, 2 abstentions, and 2 invalid ballots out of 180 lawmakers present. Chu was accused of interfering with the Assembly's vote to lift the December 3rd martial law declaration last year. Under the Constitution, sitting lawmakers cannot be arrested or detained during a session without parliamentary consent. When prosecutors seek an arrest warrant for a lawmaker during a session, a motion to arrest must be approved by the Assembly. The motion passes with a majority of lawmakers present and a majority of those present voting in favor. As the ruling Democratic Party supporting the motion holds the majority, its approval was widely expected. With the motion approved, Chu will undergo a hearing in court, where he will face a pre-arrest interrogation to determine whether a detention warrant will be issued, a session expected to be scheduled for early next month. Lawmakers also reviewed 7 public welfare bills, including the so-called Castillo Act, which would establish a presidential committee to strengthen the nation's steel industry and provide subsidies, loans, and tax benefits for green steel technology and investment. The Democratic Party had initially sought to pass around 90 bills, but reached a compromise with the People Power Party to take up the remaining measures alongside the national budget on December 2nd. National Assembly Speaker Won-sik urged both parties to prioritize public welfare over political clashes as the budget deadline nears.
Instead of sparring, I ask both parties to do their best until the end to secure every possible budget for the people.
The session took place amid heightened tensions over calls for a parliamentary investigation into the Daejang-dong real estate scandal in Seongnam during President Lee Jae-myung's tenure as mayor. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Concerns are mounting in South Korea as the Korean won has fallen to its lowest level in months against the US dollar, prompting authorities to vow to stabilize foreign exchange market volatility. For more on the domestic economy and its broader implications, we're joined today by Professor Shin Myung-gyu, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University. Professor Shim, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
So the Korean won is now at its weakest level against the dollar since April, right? With $1 at close to 1,500 Korean won. What's driving this trend, and when can we expect the exchange rate to come down?
My expectation is that such a trend, the low valued Korean won relative to other currencies, would be somewhat continued over time unless there is a fundamental change in the exchange market. First of all, the uncertainty about the trade and policy does not seem to be fully resolved even after the fact sheet was released about 2 weeks ago. I, together with my colleagues, conducted several empirical analysis and found that regardless of uncertainty surrounding the Korean economy, Korean won loses its value when the uncertainty level increases. Given that the Korean economy faces different types of uncertainties these days, I guess the rally would continue. Second, the investment atmosphere is not favorable for stabilizing the exchange rate. Investors, whether they are from domestic or foreign, lower their exposure to the Korean stock market, and this potentially lowers demand for Korean won. Lastly, the expected capital outflow to the U.S. due to the tariff agreement is not so small, which makes the investors to worry about the future of Korean won.
I see. And the Bank of Korea decided to keep its interest rate steady yesterday. What's behind this decision, and when can we expect the central bank to start cutting rates?
It's mainly because there is a tension between factors to increase the rate and those to lower it. Let me first point out the factors that hinder the interest rate cut. First, the rapid hike of the exchange rate that we just discussed is one important reason, because further widening interest rate gap between Korea and the US might result in further capital outflow. Second, the inflation rate in Korea, which is the most important factor when deciding the interest rate, seems to show the sign that it might increase. From August to October, if you look at the data, it has steadily increased from 1.7% to 2.4%, which is now above the target inflation rate of the Bank of Korea, 2%. Now, let me explain what prevents the BOK to increase the interest rate. First, the macroeconomy, which shows some positive signs of growth these days, may enter the recession unexpectedly if the BOK increases the interest rate too early, because consumption and investment might become lower due to the high interest rate. Second, the household debt has been steadily accumulated over time, and it achieves its peak level every month. And if the interest rate hikes, it will increase the burden of the households, again, a factor that lowered the growth rate of South Korea. So the Bank of Korea needs to wait until which factor dominates the other to make a significant move.
Right. You just mentioned that the economy is showing some signs of recovery, and the central bank also revised its economic outlook for next year by raising it from 1.6 to 1.8%. What's your take on this?
Yeah, revising the expectation on the economy is always a good news if it is an upward adjustment. First point to note is that the inflation expectations in Korea has increased from 2 to 2.1%, and together with greater GDP growth rate, it indicates that the economy expands due to the greater demand. It might be a positive response of consumption to the transfer to the household that was given in the previous quarter. Second, while the exchange rate has become too high during the last several months, as we just discussed, this could be a favorable situation for the exporting firms because the lower Korean won value, increases the price competitiveness of the exporting firms, so that it makes the export from South Korea to the other country to increase. And given that the export is really an important factor for the Korean economy, it also contributes to the upward adjustment of the outlook. But what we should notice is that the uncertainty surrounding the global economy as well as the Korean economy is still there, and pressure on prices in the US and Korea might put downward pressure in the near future. So careful execution of both monetary and fiscal policies is necessary.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Shim, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Over in the United States, the suspect in the recent shooting of 2 National Guardsmen near the White House was identified as an Afghan national who entered the country in 2021 under a special immigration program created for Afghans who assisted U.S. forces. This is now leading to an immigration crackdown as the government announced that it has suspended all immigration processing for Afghan nationals indefinitely. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday called for a full review of Afghan immigrants who entered the U.S. during former President Joe Biden's administration.
I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about.
His remarks came after 2 National Guard soldiers were shot and critically wounded in downtown Washington, an attack that immediately heightened security concerns in the Capitol. Within hours of President Trump's statement, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that it had suspended all immigration processing for Afghan nationals indefinitely. The agency did not provide a timeline for resuming processing and said the pause would remain in effect while federal officials conduct a broader security review. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, identified the suspect as Ramanullah Rakhanwal. Officials say Lakhanwal arrived in the United States in 2021 under a special immigration program created for Afghans who assisted U.S. forces. He had helped guard American personnel during the Kabul airport evacuation, serving in a unit known locally as the Scorpion Forces. That unit initially operated under the CIA before becoming part of Afghanistan's National Directorate of Security.
The suspect. He has been identified as Ramanullah Lakanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan who entered the United States under Biden's Operation Allies Welcome, a program following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Lakanwal's background has now become central to the political debate, with lawmakers questioning whether emergency screening during the withdrawal was sufficient. Investigators are reviewing his immigration record, his activities in the United States, and any potential motive behind the attack. They're also coordinating with defense and intelligence officials to understand whether his past service may have influenced his movements. As Washington increases its security posture and federal agencies continue their review, President Trump says his administration will pursue what he calls an immediate reassessment of Afghan entry programs in the weeks ahead. 이승재, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, TikTok and other social media platforms are propelling Korean beauty products onto major retail shelves across the United States. Now, that's according to a CNBC report on Thursday, which reported the rapid spread of Korean cosmetics thanks to viral posts and influencer-driven trends. According to market research firm Nielsen IQ, U.S. K-beauty sales are expected to reach $2 billion this year, a 37% jump from last year. The research firm says basic skincare remains the main engine of growth, while hybrid products that blend makeup with features like sun protection are also expanding steadily.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Turkey, Pope Leo XIV warned that escalating global conflicts are endangering the future of humanity as he began his first overseas trip since becoming Pope in May. Speaking in Ankara on Thursday, he said the world is facing a heightened phase of violence driven by military and economic power struggles. The Pope arrived for a 6-day trip that includes a visit to Lebanon and was welcomed by President Erdogan, who said the visit comes at a critical moment amid regional wars such as in Gaza. Pope Leo emphasized unity, peace, and protection of civilians, saying humanity must not give in to choices that undermine justice and stability. In Peru, former President Pedro Castillo was sentenced to 11 years and 5 months in prison on Thursday for attempting to dissolve Congress during a political crisis 3 years ago. Judges ruled that Castillo's move to suspend the legislature on December 7, 2022, while facing impeachment hearings, amounted to rebellion and conspiracy against the state. He was removed from office and arrested the same day. Prosecutors said he tried to undermine Peru's constitution while Castillo denied wrongdoing, calling his actions, quote, a document without consequence. His brief presidency amid removal triggered years of nationwide unrest. In Sri Lanka, heavy rain triggered landslides and floods that have killed more than 40 people and left more than 20 missing, according to the country's Disaster Management Center on Thursday. Most of the deaths were reported in the central mountainous districts of Badulla and Nuwala Ilia, where roads and rail lines were blocked by mud, rocks, and fallen trees. Severe weather that began last week intensified over the weekend, flooding homes and fields and forcing authorities to halt passenger trains in several areas. Officials say this is Sri Lanka's deadliest weather event since last year. In the United States on Thursday, New York City launched the 99th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, boasting 28 floats, 11 marching bands, and 34 balloons, including debut for Labubu and characters from K-pop Demon Hunters. The parade featured performances by Ciara, Lil Jon, and Huntrix members EJ and Ray Ami. Millions of spectators lined the 4-kilometer route as the parade marched through New York City.
Cold air has moved in behind the recent rain, and there has been a big drop in temperatures with a sub-zero morning chill in many parts of Korea. Wearing thin layers stacked together traps heat better and helps your body adjust throughout the day. But today's cold snap will be short-lived as the temperatures will return to above average just in time for the weekend. However, there will be late-night rain in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces and the capital area on Sunday night. And this afternoon, temperatures will stay chilly with a high of just 7 degrees Celsius here in the capital, Daegu, Gyeongju, Gwangju at just 10 degrees under sunny skies nationwide. Then next week, another round of stronger cold air will settle in, with temperatures dropping down to as low as -6 degrees Celsius in the middle of next week here in the capital. So if you're sensitive to the cold, keep a scarf or a neck warmer handy. Covering your neck helps your whole body stay warmer. Please take care in this sudden cold snap.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Korea, a globally recognized sports powerhouse. Behind the dazzling achievements, there's always an invisible force at work. With sophisticated materials, cutting-edge equipment, and innovative technological solutions, SMEs in the K-sports industry play a vital role in bolstering Korea's status as a sports powerhouse. By integrating AI technology, they unlock athletes' potential and enhance performance, elevating the sports environment to the next level and opening new markets in the sports industry. Their innovative technology and bold challenges drive the growth of Korea's sports industry, creating a better world through sports. The innovation of these SMEs never stops. A systematic partnership support program is implemented to discover promising sports SMEs, provide technical validation and R&D support to enhance competitiveness, and strengthen the foundation for overseas expansion. At Tokyo Sportech 2025, the technological prowess of Korean companies was recognized. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and the Korea Sports Promotion Foundation supported K-sports companies with product promotion and business consultations with global buyers, demonstrating product quality and market potential, and confirming the possibility of expanding into the global market.
저희는 ICT 강국으로서 그 바이어나 사용자들한테 신기술을 접목한 생활 스포츠 기회를 실질적으로 확대할 수 있는 그 기회를 제공하는 데 많은 도움이 될 수 있으리라고 확신을 합니다.
이제 스포츠도 K죠. K 스포츠는 이겁니다.
The joy for all, created by the power of K-sports. Experience the future of the new sports industry through the innovation and technology of the Korean sports industry.
Optimal industrial infrastructure, convenient transportation infrastructure, key secondary battery cluster, future industries, a center for marine tourism, livable residential environment, an investment hub for a better future. Gwangyang Bay Area Free Economic Zone.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, November 28th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Also, Moonju's with us.
Great to be here.
Good to have you. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we finally reached the final stretch of the week, and we wanted to wrap up with something everyone can relate to: communication. So how we talk to one another, how we stay connected, and even how we prefer to communicate have all been changing incredibly fast. One thing that's especially interesting is how different generations approach communication. So some people still swear by face-to-face conversations, saying it's the most sincere and effective way to build trust. Others feel much more comfortable with non-face-to-face communication. So today, I'm going to start out with asking you, Grace, what do you prefer? Do you prefer non-face-to-face or face-to-face communication?
Honestly, I prefer non-face-to-face communication just because, like you mentioned, I feel more comfortable being in my own space, having the freedom to carry on a conversation without having to worry really about my reactions or other nonverbal communication cues. Of course, I do think that face-to-face communication is necessary in more serious or high-level circumstances to decipher context and details, and of course for nurturing relationships. But in most situations, I think that digital communication is more efficient, time-saving, and it cuts unnecessary small talk.
So does your preference for digital communications apply to just a workplace or just across the board?
For me, I think it's just my personality across the board.
I see.
I'd rather text my friends rather than you know, meet them up and or phone them. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's just my personality.
Okay, I see. So what about you, Moonju? Where do you stand?
I do prefer in-person communications, but once you have a certain level of relationship have built, you know, digital methods, I think, carry a high risk of like misinterpreting my nuances or my intentions, which can lead to unnecessary misunderstandings. While video calls may lessen this kind of misunderstandings, but I think it still opens more room compared to face-to-face interactions. However, you know, when relationship has not been built yet, I think it might be awkward for both sides to meet face-to-face right away. So in that case, I think starting with a digital communication and then setting up a time and place for a in-person meeting could be more efficient. Yeah.
So since you prefer face-to-face, how do you feel about video calls?
I like it. I love it. But still, again, here, when I have a intimate relationship with the guy or the person,
right?
I pretty like video calls because I really like chatting, talking,
really,
some facial expressions. Yeah.
Because I heard these things, it's a very Gen Z thing to do cold calls. So you cold call, I mean, you video call someone like randomly when you. How do you feel about that? Would that be okay with you too?
Here you go. I'm not Gen Z, I think. I don't make any cold calls. I'm very uncomfortable with cold calls, but still I like making video calls or phone calling with my very intimate friends.
People that you actually feel comfortable with. So
Yeah.
there are different views on this. So we're going to dive deeper into this phenomenon. But first, let's take a look at the screen.
Communication is essential, not just for getting work done, but for building relationships and staying connected. But how we communicate can look very different depending on the generation. Some still prefer face-to-face conversations, while others are far more comfortable communicating online. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at how communication preferences differ across generations, what sparked the rise of non-face-to-face communication among millennials and Gen Z, and how we can bridge these widening communication gaps.
So as we just saw in the video, each generation brings its own style and comfort level to communication. And these differences aren't just about personal preferences. They reflect broader social, cultural, and technological shifts that shape the way we connect with one another. So Grace, which communication method does each generation tend to prefer?
Well, a recent survey in Korea asked respondents from each generation which communication method that they prefer, face-to-face meetings, via messenger platforms, direct messages on social media, phone calls, and video calls. And the survey found that each generation has different communication preferences. In particular, preferences for in-person communication was lowest among Gen Z at 27%. But then it tends to increase with age. 36% of millennials, 43% of Gen X, and 46% of baby boomers prefer in-person communication. And in terms of communication methods, messaging platforms was the most preferred among millennials at 42% and Gen Z at 52%.
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's kind of expected, but there's an actual survey that shows that younger generations, especially Gen Zs, are much more comfortable with online communication than older generations. So it's not surprising that for them, obviously, messaging and DMs feels just as natural as talking in person. But on the flip side, the older generations seem to view non-face-to-face communications more negatively. So why do you think this is, Minju?
Yeah, I think the reasons might vary, but one special one, or the one most popular one, could be efficiency, I think. You know, some people believe like texting takes more time and effort because you have to go back and forth with the others. And also, if something isn't really clear, you have to write a long message, which kind of takes time and effort. This being said, you know, younger generations tend to prefer non-face-to-face communication, whereas older generations often perceive it unfavorably. If you take a look at our screen here, 35% of baby boomers and 20% of Gen X reported viewing non-face-to-face communication negatively. In contrast, only 14% of millennials and 8% of Gen Z kind of expressed the same view. At the same time, you know, Gen Z displayed the highest confidence in their communication skills, with 57% rating themselves superior, which was very interesting.
So that definitely shows like a generational divide. So as a Gen Z, do you just rate your communication skills as superior?
Okay, first of all, I don't think I'm a Gen Z. I don't make any cold calls, and I don't rate myself as superior communication skill. So I don't think I'm a Gen Z. I should come up with a new generation called Gen Moonju or something, right?
No, I think it's quite surprising how there's a lot of people that are so confident in their communication skills. So it's clear that Gen Zs are not only comfortable, but confident in their communication skills. So thinking about confidence levels, it seems that Gen Zs feel not just capable, even excellent, or superior at digital communication. So Grace, can you explain what factors led to this rise in non-face-to-face communication among this younger generation?
Sure. Being familiar with social media culture and having built much of their social networks online since adolescence, millennials and Gen Z perceive physical contact as unnecessary for building intimacy and interpersonal relationships. And this explains why they've adapted much better than older generations to the nearly 3 years of forced non-face-to-face interactions brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, with social distancing measures in place during this time, digital infrastructure like online conferencing platforms and delivery apps made an array of remote communication possible. For instance, telemedicine, online tutoring, and of course, working and schooling from home became way more convenient and efficient for most young people.
I remember like doing meetings with, online meetings were so rare before, but now it's become so common. So I went to grad school during the COVID era, so all my classes were online, and it was kind of uncommon then. So what was your experience like because you worked at a company?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that everyone needed to adapt to because we weren't used to working from home. And even now, like once the COVID pandemic ended, we went straight back into the office, unlike other companies.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it was nice because, like I mentioned, I don't really like face-to-face communication.
Digital.
So yeah, we would take turns doing work from home days, and I really just liked, just being at the comfort of my own home, being able to just message my superiors rather than talking to them face to face.
I think especially with work, I agree that is a lot easier sometimes. And it really highlights also how young people grew up immersed in online communities and social media culture. So for a lot of young people, forming close relationships doesn't require physical presence, which explains why they adapted so well to this pandemic shift to non-face-to-face communication. And interestingly, this shift hasn't just been about necessity. So Moonju, could you explain more about why young people prefer non-face-to-face communication over this traditional face-to-face interactions?
Yeah, sure. There's a growing perception that non-face-to-face communication requires less emotional energy. I think it is kind of true. In-person interaction, demands attention to facial expressions, tone, and even atmosphere, which can feel emotionally costly. By contrast, non-face-to-face methods like messaging apps, DMs, or even emails are often asynchronous, which means that there's less pressure to respond immediately and fewer emotional cues to manage. Like people also appreciate the autonomy it provides. You can decide when to reply, you can even decide to leave it unread, and control the timing entirely on your pace. So on top of that, non-face-to-face communication is seen as more efficient because there's no need for preparation, no need for traveling or small talk that might even take a longer time to meet with a person.
So what you said really shows how much emotional energy face-to-face conversations can require. For a lot of people, being able to control the timing of their responses makes communication feel a lot more manageable, especially at work. So we also want to know what you think too. So we asked on the Arirang News YouTube channel, why do people prefer non-face-to-face communication? And here's what the results showed. So when asked why they prefer non-face-to-face communication, 58% said it creates a less psychological pressure. Another 20% point to lack of time and location constraints, while 18% appreciated being able to multitask during conversations. The remaining 4% cited other reasons. So just looking at the results, it's interesting that psychological pressure outweighs all other factors by such a large margin. And time savings and multitasking matter, but feeling less tense, I guess, seems to be the biggest driver. So for more, we're going to speak with someone in his 40s here in Korea who often interacts with people in the younger generation. So that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
So joining us today is Brian, who runs private learning institutions here in Korea. So hi, Brian. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled.
We're thrilled to have you as well. So why do you prefer face-to-face communication?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I like communication. I believe any types of communication is better than none of the communication, because communication matters. And as you mentioned, I'm running these two schools. As a result, I always contact and get to converse with people. And definitely, if I communicate with people face to face, I can read their faces and body languages. And well, I believe nonverbal way of communicating is better than just communicating with someone online like this. It would have been better if I had been invited to have a communication with you face to face. So, well, in order to get the message across to the other person, face-to-face communication is more effective and efficient. Although it's time-consuming, you have to get ready to go out. You have to make sure that you set up an appointment. So it obviously has disadvantages, but I strongly believe that there are more advantages than disadvantages when it comes to communication. Here's the thing. I love face-to-face communication. It's because I can really get the message across to the other person more effectively, like I said, and I can have a heart-to-heart talk without being distracted. When I meet someone in person, I can get things done. That's why I can see a quick reaction from the other person. I can move things along more quickly and more, I would say, productively in many cases. So in many aspects, believe me, like I prefer face-to-face communication.
Then, Brian, what difficulties have you faced due to different communication styles across generations?
That's a great question. How much time do I have? I have many difficulties, believe it or not. That doesn't mean that I'm a good communicator. I'm still evolving, and I have a long way to go. But when it comes to communicating with younger generations, sometimes I feel like they prefer, as your survey shows, non-face-to-face communication. But I feel like I need to sit down and talk with this person to get things done, or to maybe help them kind of resolve issues at hand. They have issues and concerns. That's why they approach me in the first place. And I want to offer my help to them in person. You know, I believe like when I offer them maybe suggestions, solutions in person, I can be a better counselor. But kind of obviously, you know, talking to someone just online or maybe exchanging text has limit. So here's what happened a few months back. You know, I kind of met this person online. I never met this person offline, but I asked her to have a conversation with me on the phone. I didn't want to cause any misunderstanding. That's why I just wanted to even speak with her, but she turned it down, saying she felt uncomfortable talking with me even by phone. So this explains how reluctant some people are to have face-to-face communication, as I would say.
Yeah, I see. As you also experience here, there is a communication gap between generations, and what do you think is one way to like kind of bridge those gaps?
That's the million-dollar question. I like to bridge the gap all the time. You know, here's the deal. There is a gap. We have to accept the fact that there will be a gap. There should be a gap because each generation has its own characteristics and strength and weakness. So there is a gap. But the thing is, you might want to make efforts to bridge the gap, as you mentioned. So I have to say that you have to meet. I mean, in order to bridge the gap, you have to meet. I mean, we're talking about face-to-face communication. Sometimes people are, you know, not willing to go out of their way to meet someone to talk things out. But if you try to meet people, and believe me, like, believe it or not, you can get, you know, whatever you want to do done, maybe in a faster way and in a more productive way, so that you can be happier, you can be satisfied, you know, with the result. So I would say community, you might want to build a community where you have similar interests and taste, so that regardless of age, you can get together and you can hang out even later. And that way, naturally, it can hopefully bridge the gap among generations. So for one example, like, you know, studying English can be a good way to bridge the gap because they have similar interests and their priority is to enhance their English skills.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, bringing up some important points, and also sharing your anecdote earlier as well.
Thank you so much for having me once again.
So we just heard from someone in the older generation about the differences in communication styles and how those can sometimes create challenges with younger people. So shifting the conversation back to you, Grace, have you ever experienced any like awkward, difficult situations when it comes to communication?
I've definitely seen how generational communication differences have led to awkward moments in day-to-day situations. For example, as we're seeing many fast food chains and even sit-in restaurants use more kiosks or QR code menus, it's making ordering a daunting task for some in the older generations, like my parents. I've noticed that now they give up ordering altogether and just leave it up to us to order when it's through digital methods. And I also sometimes use a popular messaging app in Korea to chat with my grandma, but I've definitely seen her struggle typing sentences out that she would just normally be able to easily communicate with me. And it does take her a much longer time to say what she wants, but it's also been really cool to see how she has adapted, and now she can even send me photos and emojis.
That's so cute. But I think that's why, making sure everyone has digital literacy is so important. Because my grandma also has gotten quite good at using that messenger app. So we also send each other gifts. So she does that too. So it's been really nice as well. So what about you, Moonju?
Yeah, I didn't really feel awkward of this differences, excuse me, because I don't really strongly prefer one over the other. But I still noticed the contrast here, while offering a job position for me. Those relatively in older generations kind of wanted to meet face to face and talk the details about it, while those relatively young kind of handled it through all via messages and DMs and emails and stuff. So I think here there's a really clear contrast of how they are handling those kind of important issues regarding them. Yeah.
I agree. So Grace, what do you think is the best way to approach communication differences between generations?
Well, I think generational differences are in fact only natural, and I think the best way to handle this is to first acknowledge our differences, and accepting that reality will give us the freedom to be more open and understanding to other ways of life and how it's been done by older generations in the past. And it's especially important to have this sort of attitude instead of insisting on our own ways of communicating in this digital era. And we also have to respect former ways of communication like in-person dialogue, writing letters, and talking over the phone, since those methods were probably the most up-to-date and convenient at that time and place. And so, we're gonna eventually get old one day, and our, DMs and messaging apps will probably be outdated in the future as well.
It's kind of a very scary and also very humbling thought.
Yes.
I think it's good to remember. Do you have anything to add, Moonju?
Yeah, whether face-to-face or digital, I think here we have to remember the essence is communication. They both have ups and downs of each method here. So rather than, just sticking to one method, we should choose whichever works best in the given situation, I think. For example, a quick report might be handled through a text message, so you could just go back and forth and just confirm it. But when you're deciding on important decisions or making important decisions, I think it is better to do it in face-to-face meetings, but because you can give immediate feedback, and you can kind of see each other's facial expressions to think about how they feel about it, right? So I think there are some both ups and downs of it. So in other words, I think finding the right balance is key here as every other things here.
I think you're right. Definitely, I like what you said about how there are definitely pros and cons to each way of methods. It's good to appreciate all different sides. So in the end, there's no single right way to communicate. Each generation brings its own habits, strengths, and comfort zones, and understanding those differences is the first step toward bridging the gap. And one way to do that is to remember that at the end of the day, every generation wants the same thing, to feel heard and understood, and recognizing our differences can actually help us connect better, not divide us. So whether we communicate face-to-face or through a screen, what's important is making the effort to truly understand one another. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. My News Gen will be back on Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Grace.
Thank you for having me.
For coming in. Also Moonju.
My pleasure.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.
엔진 점화, 이륙. 누리호가 발사되었습니다.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors, grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here, add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?